Good morning. It's March 31st, 2022, and welcome to Triggered. I'm Cory Morgan. This is the Western Standard's daily live discussion, guest interview, news sort of show, and of course, with a lot of ranting and opinion out of me, though we cover some news items as well. This show comes live every day at 11:30 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, Monday to Friday. I don't do holidays, though, and we come on for specials now and then. Being live, as I keep pointing out on every show for folks who are new, I love seeing the comments. You know, this is the opportunity that comes with not looking at a canned show. You can discuss things with each other. You can send comments towards me, send them towards the guests. We won't necessarily read them all out or anything, but I do see them all, and it does keep things more lively, you know. And sometimes people bring up subjects and things that I never considered or thought of. I get some really great stuff out of the audience. So thank you guys for the comments and keep them coming. And of course, though, keep them civil. You know, we can be a little angry, a little grumpy. I'm that way all the time, but we don't have to be fighting with each other. And, you know, on the internet and comment scrolls, that's unfortunately all too common. You know, I've seen a lot of discussions derailed by things. So I got a couple of great guests as always today, so you don't have to listen to me for the entire hour and a half. I've got Senator-elect Erika Barootes. She was one of the ones selected in our Senate elections. She's now a senator in waiting. Being in Canada, that waiting could be a terribly long time, or it could be short. We'll see. But when a prime minister finally gets in that decides to appoint them, she may become one of our Alberta senators. And I'm going to have Michelle Stirling. She's been on a number of times from the Friends of Science to get a reaction to the latest emissions targets set out by the Liberal government and Trudeau and his henchman Gil Bull, because, I mean, they've come up with some just outright crazy goals that they think they're going to meet by 2030. So Michelle will add a little bit of realism. I know, you know, there's obviously a campaign going on about this for the APP, Alberta Prosperity Project, and thank you guys for pushing your cause, and I appreciate it, but quit spamming my comment scroll, guys. I've got Dr. Modry on tomorrow. We're going to talk about the Alberta Prosperity Project, and we will discuss it at length. Okay, so let's talk about what's got me going aside from promotion of side groups, and I know that's what you got to do when you're trying to get a group going anyway, and that's the treatment of our police, particularly in Calgary. So over 865 police officers have died in the line of duty in Canada. Countless others have been injured or suffered from PTSD due to pressures from their career. Policing is a brutally difficult career, both physically and emotionally. I mean, police officers put their health and mental well-being on the line every day for their job. They work long hours and some terrible shifts and often experience family breakdowns due to their career choice. It's far from one of the best paying jobs out there either. I mean, with the time and training required in order to become a police officer, a person could train for any number of careers that pay better and come with a lot less personal risk and stress. So, I mean, police work's a calling. It isn't for everybody. I certainly wouldn't do it. Now, the thin blue line patch, it's been worn by police officers for years, and Canadian ones, and it's as a recognition for the role of their fellow officers. It represents that fragile line between anarchy and law and order. So that's why it's a thin blue line. It's a symbol, and it's over the Canadian flag, as can be seen. It also serves as a recognition, honoring the sacrifices made by fellow officers, including those who lost their lives in the line of duty. Now, the thin blue line is a symbol of solidarity and pride. It's benign, and it gives officers a passive means to express their support for each other. Now, due to lobbying from extreme anti-police elements, officers are being told that they must strip this symbol of memorial and solidarity. A myth is being perpetuated that this patch represents white supremacy. We should dismiss these ridiculous accusations immediately and out of hand as soon as we hear them. Instead, we're indulging these extremists. For the last few years, police forces, from the RCMP to many municipal forces, have been issuing orders banning officers from displaying this patch. These radicals aren't just the usual suspects who head those constant protests against policing and police forces. Some of these fringe thinkers reside within influential government roles. City of Calgary Communications Relations Advisor Adam Messiah is one of those zealots. I was shocked when I heard his statement on a radio news broadcast this morning when he did an interview for Global News. So I'm going to play it so you can hear it for yourself.
A lot of officers weren't because it meant Blue Lives Matter. A lot of white officers weren't because they support the idea of a white suprematic police state and a Eurocentric idea of how Calgary is supposed to be.
So, I mean, it's a short clip, and that might have sounded a little rough, but bottom line is, with no evidence to support it, Messiah said that a lot of police officers wore the patch because they support a white suprematic police state. And he said that they want to create a Eurocentric world. This sort of statement is inflammatory, divisive, and utterly inappropriate from a civic employee. How many non-white officers wear that patch? I mean, many do. And how must they feel to be belittled and accused of supporting white supremacism from an influential city bureaucrat? Activists, including Calgary's current mayor, have been pushing to defund police forces for years, while blaming officers whenever anything may go wrong. When the defund movement was indulged with increased funding for community initiatives to prevent crime, they were still outraged because the police themselves weren't actually defunded. Now, they always claimed that they wanted more community resources and that that's all that they wanted, but no, that lie was exposed once they got what they asked for. There wasn't enough for them. Their movement is vindictive, angry, and anti-police, and we have to stop indulging them. Their goals are not realistic, and they're putting all of us at risk. American cities that defunded their police forces experienced crime waves. Anybody but a crazed activist or a progressive mayor could see, and they could have seen that coming easily, yet we still see influential people calling to defund the police. In what world does defunding something improve it? Will defunding education make teachers better? Defunding healthcare improve surgical outcomes? The reasoning of the defund movement is outright bizarre, yet we continue to take it seriously. This constant campaign of insulting and belittling police is coming with a price. A Calgary Police Commission 2021 employee engagement report showed that just 19% of the respondents said morale within the force is good. Only 19% thought morale was good, the lowest levels in a decade. And is that really surprising? I mean, how's it got to feel to prepare for a shift of putting your safety at risk at late night hours, dealing with people who are going to be spitting on you, berating you, and sometimes assaulting you, only to hear from your employers that you should be ashamed of your job, that you're a potential white supremacist and you should be defunded? Is it any wonder that officers do act out on occasion? In any other realm of employment, when employees are acting out and behaving poorly, the employer will try and find out why the workers are experiencing poor morale. In policing, civic leaders are responding by doubling down on the abuse of the officers. Indulging the extreme anti-police activists is actually contributing to the problem of police misconduct. Happy, relaxed officers are far less likely to break rules than the ones who've been beaten down, insulted, and defunded. It's hard to believe this has to be said. The RCMP, they've been unable to fill their recruiting goals, and people are hardly lining up to join the other forces. Do activists really think quality of policing is going to improve as veteran officers are driven out while a smaller pool of activists come in to fill the void? I mean, police officers are human. Of course they make mistakes. And with their job, their mistakes can come with the most tragic of endings. We can't give them a pass when there's been misconduct, and nobody's saying we should. We entrust and task police officers with protecting us from harm, and we need to treat them with respect for taking on that role. The first step in respecting our police officers is to stand up and tell radical activists like Adam Messiah to get stuffed. We can't allow this constant anti-police campaign to be indulged and appeased. It harms officers, and by extension, it's going to harm all of us. If the thin blue line patch is tossed to the wayside, rest assured whatever new symbol is created will be smeared and decried as well. The anti-police movement doesn't want police showing any signs of pride or solidarity. They only want the police to display shame and contrition for actions most of them aren't even responsible for. Nobody should be treated like that for their career choice. And that's what's got me triggered today. Okay, now that's out of my system. Let's bring Dave in. Dave Naylor, our news editor from the Western Standard, and see what else is making news today. Hey, Dave, how's it going?
It's going well, Cory. You know, you couldn't pay me enough money to be a cop these days.
No. I mean, it's a tough job. You'd think at the least you could get some respect out of it anyways, you know?
Exactly. So once again, another busy morning for us here in the newsroom. The website is leading off with a news angle, a new feature on from our military affairs correspondent, Dave Makachuk. And he's looking at the future of the Snowbirds, the Canadian Forces demonstration team, with the purchase this week of 88 brand new F-35s. Talk will next turn to replacing the aging Snowbirds. So there's Dave's look at that on there right now. Tomorrow is going to be a ridiculous day for all Canadians. If you live in Alberta, you're going to be paying lots more for gas. Albertans are getting a little bit of a break, but the new carbon tax goes on in the morning, and the annual increase in taxes on booze, beer, wine, spirits. That'll cause your favorite tipple to increase in price tomorrow. MPs will be able to afford it because MPs and Prime Minister Trudeau get a raise. So isn't that nice of them? You've got a column up, Cory, from Ottawa, Mr. Creighton, talking about the Canadian flag being owned by all of us, not just politicians. We've got a story up on also out of Ottawa. If you remember when all the hundreds of flights were canceled because of COVID when the pandemic first started, well, that led to a flood of complaints to federal regulators. In fact, a total of 26,000 Canadians filed formal complaints trying to get their cash back, and there's still 11,000 complaints that they haven't even got to yet. We've got a reaction from the Defense Minister, Anita Anand, to the guilty plea and sentence yesterday to the former Chief of Staff, General Vance, for obstruction. She says every single day she is working to prevent misconduct by top military officers. Every single day. Our Mike Thomas has a couple of pieces up there this morning. The Royal LePage report on recreational properties is out. Not surprisingly, they're skyrocketing in price like everything else. So if you want to buy your weekend getaway on a lake somewhere or near the mountains, you're going to have to pay through the nose. And Mike's also got a feature up there on the People's Convoy. This is the American version of the Freedom Convoy. They descended on Washington, D.C. earlier this month. Well, they're now packing up and they're heading to California. Cross-country trip to California to demonstrate against looming COVID-19 mandates coming down in California. Other stuff we've got today includes a CBC, a story on the CBC telling their employees to make sure that they use Google to identify the ethnicity of all their guests so they can try and prove that they're being very diverse. So that's what the CBC is doing with your tax dollars. Coming up this afternoon, Cory, our Matthew Horwood in Ottawa is going to the big Pierre Poilievre rally against carbon taxes. And we're going to have a big scoop. I can only tease viewers on it at the moment. But if you come back to the site around 5 o'clock this afternoon, Mountain Standard Time, we're going to have some big breaking news. So there you go. Keep you on pins and needles there, Cory.
Great, much appreciated. And just that reminder, so you're going to be recording something on that as well. It's going to be a digital production. So just for everybody who wants to catch that as soon as it comes out, if you're every one of these ways that you're following and watching this show right now, make sure to turn on your alerts and things like that. So when you see that news pop up when it breaks, it is a pretty big scoop. It's going to be interesting.
Yep, it's a big story.
All right. Well, thanks, Steve. I'll let you get back on churning out that news and getting ready for that interview.
Thanks, Cory.
Great, thanks. So that's our news editor, Dave Naylor. And again, as I keep pointing out, boy, it used to be such a small segment even, a while back, starting on what we got breaking for the news in the morning, but we've expanded so much in the last 6 months even with reporters in Ottawa, Saskatchewan, BC, Manitoba, all over the place. These stories in the morning, there's just a load of them. And if you want to see them without having to deal with a paywall, you got to pay. We're subscriber based. I mean, as Dave pointed out how horrific the CBC is in their wretched coverage. Well, that's because they get $1.5 billion from you taxpayers every year. And look at the garbage they produce. In our case, we answer only to our subscribers. And that means, though, we need you guys to get on board. Check it out. Use the coupon code TRIGGERED. You'll save yourself $10. With these carbon taxes and everything going up, every dollar counts. Get on there. Take out a subscription. If you haven't already, get on there. And if not, share it with others. Spread the word. This is how we don't have to listen to the mainstream garbage media any longer, is by supporting independent outlets like us. And I mean, that's what I was talking about. The thing that got me going with that police rant this morning, I was, as I say, I torture myself listening to talk radio on the drive here. And I listened to one of the hosts going on about that with the patch and the thin blue line saying, yeah, we should just be nice. We should just get rid of it and come up with a new one. That's a good idea. It'll make everybody happy. Like, really? Nothing they make and change it out to will make the activists happy. You got to stop appeasing them. But that's the message they want to put out, because they like getting their mayor who comes onto their show every Friday and blathers at them and things such as that. You see, we are beholden in those ways. We'll report things frankly and directly to you guys. And again, getting to those patches, the police, I mean, they aren't perfect. And hey, I'm certain there's some racist police officers out there. Absolutely there are. There's some criminal ones. There's some violent ones. But they're in the minority. And addressing them by belittling the entire force is not going to help. It's not. So, I mean, if we've got a real problem, let's take a real approach on fixing it. A realistic one. And this defunding crap and this constant saying they should be ashamed of themselves is not going to make them act any better. Not at all. Okay, I'm going to talk about one of our sponsors quickly before we get to our guests as well. Hey there, Kathy. And that's Bitcoin Well. These guys have been, well, they were kind of our flagship sponsor, our first big one here at the Western Standard. And they're still with us because our relationship's been going well. Lots of you guys have been checking out their services and taking advantage of it. And we're more than happy to keep promoting it. What they are is a Western Canadian-based company. They're here on the ground. You know, people worry about with digital currencies. Is it a scam? Is it a ripoff? Or is this some distant foreign company? No, this is local. It's employing local people. And they will give you one-on-one service to help you get involved and navigate those, you know, waters of digital currency because it's new. It's different. And their whole role is to facilitate. They don't hold on to your money. They never have it. It's non-custodial. You always control your own money. And it's safe that way because the big worry people have, of course, is the safety of their funds. You work hard for it. You saved it. You want to make sure it's yours. Well, Bitcoin Well are the guys to help show you how to get into that world should you choose to and help you take control of your money. So check them out, bitcoinwell.com. All right. So what do we see some of these comments here? Well, yeah, there's Kim Holmes. I guess, you know, racism in the police officers isn't always just with white officers. How come that's not talked about? There's some truth to that. I mean, there's ingrained prejudices that can come on a lot of levels. I mean, the police have a lot of hard stuff to deal with. I can understand it, for example, how some judgments could come roughly with a lot of our downtown troubled population, the addicted people, the homeless people. A great number of them are First Nations members. And it doesn't matter which officer, if they've had too many negative interactions with them, they could start negatively judging First Nations people when they encounter them immediately because of that. And that's true racism. That's prejudice. Even if it built unintentionally, even if they don't realize they're doing it. These are serious problems. And this could happen to any officer of any race if they're not. I mean, there's ways we should be working to improve training and watching for these things so we do have a fair police force and reduce these sorts of incidents of racism all over the place as much as possible. But when we keep slamming the whole force, when we keep dejecting them, when we keep telling them they should be ashamed of themselves, that's not going to help at all. You know, I'll wait because it's too soon to the next guest. But when I'm done with Erika Barootes, I'm going to tell a story about an incident I got to see in the States in Pennsylvania when I had hired a young black fellow to work for us out there on a contract I was doing in oil exploration. And we had an experience with the police that was, and with some locals, that was a gross incident of racism. And it was very horrible to behold. And it's something I've never had to personally experience, but it really did drive home how people, who are, white and like myself never do have to deal with that sort of crap. It reminds us it really does happen out there and it really is troubling. And we really got to work on those things. And it was an eye opener for me. So I'll expand a little on how that all came about, because it really does happen out there, guys. It's not just woke news and things like that point out these incidents. The problem is their solutions just aren't good ones, and going after our forces in general is not the way to deal with it. David Thompson, saying make police responsible for their actions. I think to a large degree, a lot of them are. I mean, there's commissions, there's inquiries. There have been problems with the police in the past, internal investigations, things like that. They can be biased, they can be prejudiced, and sometimes let officers off the hook for misconduct. I mean, we just have to keep working on it. It's an ongoing process. You improve the controls. You work on, again, making the training better, making the processes better. But I just can't think of anything more stupid than defunding them. We can't get rid of them. We can't. They're in need. In a civilized society, we need it. We need it, minimalized. As I've said before, I'm a classical liberal. I'm a libertarian sort. I want as much individual freedom as possible for everybody out there. And that means the least amount of police interaction. But still, we do need police. You need police to prevent others from stealing things from you. You need them to prevent people from assaulting you. All of these basic things. Unfortunately, there's a lot of rough people in humanity. Not all of us are equipped to defend ourselves against those people. That's why we pitch in as a civilized society to have a group of people designated to enforcing these laws. And it's a tough, bloody job. And we need to support them. But we aren't. We're going the wrong way. Now, let's see what else we got here going on in the news. That censorship panel, I think Dave mentioned that. So this is the Heritage Minister, Pablo Rodriguez, appointed a panel of experts apparently, mostly professors. Now we got to think of what comes out of our areas of higher education, if you even want to call it that. You know, it's almost tongue-in-cheek to say that. But these professors are going to be the ones who give advice on how to regulate the internet in Canada. You see, the government hasn't stopped with their plans to control our speech, to control our discourse, to stop shows like this. They want to stop it. They do not like this, guys. They want the CBC. They want controlled media. And they make no secrets about it. Well, Cabinet's proposed hiring a federal censor to block legal online content that they deem harmful. This is dangerous, dangerous territory, guys. Very dangerous. And yet they're just openly doing it. Rodriguez told reporters, we're open to all ideas. The only thing we want is to do the right thing and make it right. You know, so they want to make it happen. How important is I'm just reading some of the news copy of this. How important is this question that the bill doesn't infringe on charter rights? And Rodriguez did say it's fundamental. Well, then if you believe that, get the hell out of it. It's not your job to regulate what we say. That's the way the charter works. Free speech means hearing some things you don't like hearing. Free speech means hearing some BS at times. Free speech means, you know, hearing some misinformation. You got to sift and cut through it. With freedom comes responsibility. So many people seem to forget that. So yes, there's a price. Every freedom has a price, and free speech has that one. We've got laws already on the books about illegal speech, such as counseling people to assault people, such as trying to incite another crime or a danger. Again, you know, the old, oh, what about yelling fire in a theater? Well, yeah, that is inciting harm to people. Come on, we've got judges for this. We can determine the difference between what should be a free speech and what isn't. And those limitations are already there. The laws are already there. We don't need more. The problem that the federal government has right now is that they don't like what they're hearing. A lot of the speech is things that they want to control and push to the wayside. As much like any authoritarian regime, one of the first things they have to do is try and control information. And that information comes through speech, and right now the internet predominantly. So this is a real problem, and this is going before committee. Unfortunately, I don't see any more respect coming from NDP leader Jagmeet Singh for unrestrained free speech than we see coming from Prime Minister Trudeau or his henchmen in cabinet. So what's this more text from Rodriguez when he was questioned on this? I'll tell you something else, because he said he respects charter rights, but he's not. This bill is an offense to free speech, so he doesn't respect charter rights. He said there's a lot of people who don't want to share what they think anymore. They're afraid of going online to speak freely because of the negative and violent reaction they might get. I think in some ways this bill will actually help freedom of speech. Oh, what a load of crap. Come on, guys, don't feed me that. Look, yeah, we do see some negative and nasty online comments out of a lot of people. There's no coward worse than some of the people on Twitter with an anonymous account throwing their stuff out at people. And it's on the left, it's on the right. It doesn't really matter. There's people who will throw out threats. There's people who will try to intimidate online. But you know what? There are laws against that already. I mean, you got to see what he's talking about. Some people are afraid to go online because of the negative and violent reaction. Okay, violence illegal. So we've already got a law for that. If they're pushing violence, if people are threatening people, we've got laws already to deal with that. Plus, most of the social media majors, if a person starts threatening somebody on a social media platform, that account is going to be banned, and quickly. But the other word not to forget is negative. People aren't going online because of the negative reaction they might get. Well, so what? If you're coming on to debate things, you're going to get negative response. God, you guys should see what my email inbox looks like sometimes. You learn to live with it. Block and delete, move on. As I said before, with a dog, when they leave something in the lawn, you scrape those feet and kick some grass over it and move on. It's not the place of the government to control the entire platform of speech because somebody might get some negative response. But again, they don't care about negative response anyways. They're making their excuses for a bill that is going to work to crush online discourse, and it's dangerous. It's extremely dangerous. Most of the viewers here, of course, already appreciate alternative media. That's clear. That's why you're here right now. And we've got other outlets, Rebel and True North and Post Millennial, all these outlets, Epoch Times. They can't exist, though, without having these freedoms protected. They are very much new alternative media outlets. We're reliant on the internet and those things. And if the government starts crushing us on these things, what do we got left? CBC, government messaging, Globe and Mail, the Red Star, these outlets that take tax dollars to basically regurgitate whatever the government line is for themselves. That's what you get stuck with, guys. And this is where we are working right now. And unfortunately, yes, with the full support of some, I've just got to send a quick message. So I think we got a little bit of a technical issue with our guest. All right. She should be here shortly. That's why I've been kind of rambling. Nothing more fun on a live broadcast than a late guest, but she will get here, I think. So what do we got? Somebody else saying walkie-talkies. Yeah, we're going to get to that point of back to ham radios and communicating through that. There she is. Okay, great. So I'm going to stop babbling at you guys, filling these minutes in, and bring in our guest, Erika Barootes, and discuss what we were going to get at today. So let's bring her in. Hey, how's it going?
Good. Sorry, I forgot to hit the button that said enter the room. So I was just hanging out for a bit. That's why I should always just come down and do it in person. But
well, yeah, we've got that bigger studio now. We wouldn't be all squashed together like the last time you were down in here. No, appreciate. Glad we got you in anyways. You always start to worry these live things. It makes it hard to reach out and see what's up. So yeah, when you come in, it'll put you into a lobby and you're safe to come in later. So the next time you're on, we'll know that for sure.
Sounds good. I'm the worst millennial ever. I can't figure out technology. So just proved it to everyone today.
Yeah, I'm getting worse as I go myself. But I'm a Gen Xer. So I think, tech-wise, you always hit a certain point and then you just stop learning further. And then that's when you got to start asking the kids to show you how to program things and stuff.
Exactly.
All right. So I wanted to bring you in because I've been interviewing actually a series of the Conservative Party of Canada leadership candidates. And I try to throw them all a consistent question. I think there's 5 of them I've interviewed now so far and another one tomorrow. And I ask if they would commit to appointing our elected senators, of which you are one of those. And all except Mr. Charest actually so far have positively responded. And Mr. Charest wasn't fully negative. He just wouldn't commit, which is a difficult one to see. So it's an important race, though, and that's another element within it. If we want our elected members to ever actually be appointed, we'll need a conservative leader who supports that.
Oh, definitely. We do need that. And I think that, it's very important in this race to see that they would commit to the autonomy and respect Alberta. I think that that's going to be a big item in this conservative leadership. Is seeing how they're going to actually listen to the West, address Western alienation. And I think that the Senate election is a demonstration of that. It's a system that we have here, unique to Alberta, and something that we've just recently gone through. So for me, it's very important. And I think for Albertans, it'll be very important for them to honor that system and process that we have here.
Yeah, well, and that's part of our problem. And that's what being a Western outlet, I've hit them with a lot of questions, and they've dodged quite a bit on a lot of them. It's understandable in the at least the purely political sense. If you want to win a federal race, particularly with weighted ridings, you have to make sure that you really appeal to central Canada, particularly Quebec and Ontario. I mean, to a degree, I don't take it personally. It's math. But still, they don't want to touch equalization. They don't want to touch supply management. They don't want to even, go into these issues if they can avoid them. That's where hopefully a senator could at least address these, because you're not quite worrying so much about those things.
Definitely. There's roles for everyone to play. And I would hope that some of the conservative candidates, and as much as there's heavy numbers for them to win an election out east, would still respect Alberta. They're representing coast to coast. So clearly our prime minister doesn't do that, but I would love to see a conservative candidate that would stand up for the West. But you're right. The Senate can also bring forward their own pieces of private members' legislation that could address that. And as a senator, or in this case, Senate-elect, your role and responsibilities is to advocate for the area in which you present. And that is obviously a top-of-mind issue in Alberta and something that I would definitely champion should I have the opportunity to out in Ottawa.
Well, that's it. I mean, from way back when in the late '80s and '90s, the big rallying call for the Reform Party was Triple E Senate, which stands for equally elected and effective. Now, to get that would take constitutional reform, and I've found no candidate yet willing to go open that can of worms yet. But I do think at least if you can get one of the E's, you got a better chance of getting another one of them with the effective. If they're elected, it means they had to pass some bar aside from just appealing to a particular prime minister at a certain time, but then getting effective once they're in. But would you perhaps be lobbying a bit to try and reform the Senate itself once you got in there?
Definitely. I mean, I think that that's where change can really happen. To your point, the triple E is the long marathon game, but I think the biggest sprint opportunity or short term win in reforming the Senate would be that elected role. There's criticism that, well, Alberta's doing this. You're the only one. Well, it's got to start somewhere. I think last time I was on the show, you talked about how in the States that's how it originally started as well, with some of the states taking ownership over who they were sending to represent them. And that's kind of how they evolved to where they are today. And I do think there's an accountability, very long runway of being there, and I don't believe that should be the case in the Senate as well. I shouldn't be there till I'm 75, so I think there's lots of opportunity to really show the value out of the Senate and truly put it in a position to be sober second thought. And I believe that first step is by appointing elected senates and then reforming it from within.
So going beyond that, I mean, it's kind of been almost exclusively an Alberta initiative to elect our senators. Have you seen any indication of movement within other provinces? Like, the more provinces get on board and start doing this, the more pressure it'll put on a prime minister, whether it's conservative or liberal, or even Deputy Prime Minister Jagmeet Singh, to push and get those elected ones rather than their personal appointees. Like, it can add to public pressure. But is there indications anybody else wants to move on this sort of thing?
Well, I wouldn't say that this new NDP Liberal coalition is going to be knocking down my door anytime soon. But I think when it comes to the potential for other provinces, that would be a great place for the West to really unite behind one another. I think that even during these elections, I'm a good Sasky girl, so know that Saskatchewan was watching the elections. Obviously, I can't speak to what policies Premier Moe would bring in or wouldn't. But I think Manitoba and Saskatchewan would be great partners, as well as BC. And actually, if you can get those groups on side, you could actually have that reform within the Senate. So I think it's a good strategy to look at. But no, I haven't heard specifics of someone ready to adopt the Senate Act in another jurisdiction.
Okay, well, I'm just kind of pitching that in a sense. As you said, you're a Saskatchewan girl, and Premier Moe is actually a good, receptive sort of premier. I mean, if maybe some of the elected senators, your senators in waiting technically, well, you don't have to wait passively. Maybe you can start pushing to get more people to join that waiting list in other provinces and help lobby on them. Because I think Saskatchewan residents, Manitoba, even some of the maritime citizens would be pretty happy to be able to make a mark on a ballot in that choice.
I definitely don't agree, and we all know I'm not very quiet, so you'll likely see that coming down the pipe from me. And I know that the other Senate elects are also keen to approach both the federal and other jurisdictions to show that it's a beautiful thing of democracy to elect your Senate and the upper house.
So what priorities? I may as well hit on where you're at there as an elected senator. If you got in, what would your top priorities upon entering that red chamber be?
Yeah, so the first one is definitely equalization. I've lived in the West my entire life and understand. I lived in Saskatchewan when it was a have-not province, then moved to Alberta in early 2000s. So I've seen where, you had great economic success and where it's been tougher times. And so I think it's a big thing to reassess that the formula just doesn't work anymore. And I think that's something that obviously the Prime Minister doesn't want to address. And I think Alberta could go even farther than we have on standing up to the federal government on what our fair deal looks like. So definitely championing that as I traveled around the province over the summer and during the election period. That is what I heard. It is, we work really hard. We're happy to be a part of the team, but this doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for how we feel as part of the team. And it doesn't make sense when we're having tough times that nobody steps up for us. And honestly, like, if anyone's been a part of a team, you realize that you've got to all come together and rally behind each other when you need it. And I think that Alberta has lived that long enough where they feel left out, but always giving out of pocket. So that's definitely something. And then I'm very passionate about mental health for our veterans. So I'd actually want to bring in a private member's bill that would also address kind of the gap when they're leaving their service to get the right mental health and not get lost in the system, because those first few months or even year out of service is definitely something I think we owe the people that stood up for us and put boots on the ground to protect our freedoms. So that's another one. A little bit, yeah.
Oh, I was just saying that's a good one to hear. I mean, there's a tragic amount of veterans find themselves on the street or addicted because they come back from very stressful duties and suffer from PTSD. And if it's not addressed soon, it could really develop into something terrible. So it's good to hear some initiative on that.
Yeah, definitely. I think it would be a lot of work, but something that I think there's, you'd get support across the aisle and in the House as well on something like that.
I would like to think it'd be hard to see anybody opposing that, though. I mean, our politicians never fail to underwhelm sometimes. But so with your term, actually, in the case of this, because it's kind of changed election by election, is there an expiration date, though, on your election? Hopefully you get appointed before that hits. But when does that end?
Yeah, I definitely think I have a little bit of a runway, but to your point, under the Election Act, it can be called during a municipal, provincial, or a standalone election. So I guess I'm also at the will of the provincial government on when they think that this term should go into re-election. Obviously, I don't think that any of us should be just gifted it again. We've got to work hard and earn the votes of Albertans just like we did last fall. And as it sits right now, like I said, I've got some runways. So I would, as of today, want to put my name forward. I still think that there's lots of change to make in the Senate. And I'll continue talking loud and proud about that until I might have to put my name back on a ballot.
Great. And just to finish up, so you were elected as a Conservative Party of Canada senator. Are you involved in the leadership race at all, or have you taken any stances, or are you just kind of watching at this point?
I am just watching at this point, not kind of getting behind anyone. I want to see the full scope. What I would hope as Conservatives and obviously there's so much going on in Conservative politics, provincially and federally right now, but what I'm looking for is actually a candidate that can beat and unseat Justin Trudeau. I wouldn't be necessarily looking to all of my ideological beliefs lining up completely. I don't think we need to be liberals to win or liberal light. I think we can be strong Conservatives with values that align with traditionally our party. And that's what I'm going to be looking for, is who's going to do what they say they're going to do in their election. And then the other thing is who can actually go toe to toe. We have to show Canadians that, as they keep going more left, we need to be that right alternative for Canadians. And I want to see that from those leaders.
Great. Well, it is going to be a long horse race going all the way into September. So we'll see how those campaigns develop. And as I said, I'm interviewing more and more of the candidates and see where they land. They've all been pretty cagey, but it's kind of be expected this early in the campaign. As they fill out their platforms, I suspect they'll get a little more specific and some issues and things like that. So
there'll never be a dull moment.
Oh, no, we don't allow that to happen, especially with Conservatives. I mean, if we aren't going after the Liberals, we're ripping each other up to the entertainment of everybody else. So if nothing else, show hopefully it gets more productive. So thanks for checking in with us today, though. I appreciate that, and just seeing what you've been up to or what you're looking to do as a senator in waiting. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we let you go?
I just want to apologize for being late. I'm usually like 5 minutes early, so I do apologize for that. I'm sure that all your listeners were very happy to hear more from you and less from me. But no, thank you for having me, and I'm more than happy to come back and talk about some of the issues as the leadership race kind of gears up and what we can expect for Alberta.
Well, excellent, much appreciated, and I'll let you get back to waiting, I guess, and we'll talk again soon. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Yes, that's our Senator-elect, Erika Barootes. And, again, it's a process. It's just looking at pragmatism. You want to get things, even small victories. I mean, getting some of our elected senators in won't fix the whole Senate, but it's a good start, and it moves in the right direction, and it puts pressure on. And the more that do so, the better. I'm going to speak quickly to one of our sponsors. Then I will relate that story from Pennsylvania I was going to talk about, because I want to add some balance to some things here on real issues. But either way, the Canadian Shooting Association, these guys are one of our sponsors. They've been a fantastic one, and they're there for you as an advocacy group to support your right and ability to use, collect, firearms. I mean, the name sort of says it all. It's an association like anything else. I mean, I'm going to take up beekeeping this year, and I'm going to join some sort of beekeeping association so I can share the resources with other people doing it, and you can better do it and more safely do it. So with the Canadian Shooting Sports Association, they have all those resources, videos on safe firearm use, links to upcoming trade shows for firearms, things like that. And most importantly, and as I mention every time, they have a number of legal challenges out on behalf of firearm owners to make sure you preserve your right and ability to use safely firearms, whether hunting, target shooting, collecting, whatever you want. It's your business. These guys are lobbying for it. And as we know, with our rights, if we don't stand up for them, they will get taken away. The government is always eager to take your rights away, and one of them is property. And they keep recategorizing these firearms and stealing them from you. They're going to keep doing it as long as we let them get away with it. So join, if you're a firearms owner, you really should join the Canadian Shooting Sports Association. Take out a membership with them. That's how they can keep moving to stand up for you and your rights and abilities out there. So they've been a great sponsor, and by all means, get on board. So yes, I ripped into the defund the police movement, and I will continue to. And I'm very upset with them, and I think there's some extreme activists. But I do want to add some balance that there are some real issues out there, and ones that I haven't had to experience, but I gained a little bit of insight and understanding into. And it's a bit different in the States than here. I think we're much better up here with racial issues than the States. I think that's an easy statement to make, but we've always got more to work on. So I'll give this story. Jane's heard it a number of times, as she heard me. We'll have to live rant it while I was working down there. I was running a seismic crew, or at least a survey crew for it down in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. It's kind of central Pennsylvania. It's where the Little League World Championship is held every year, actually. And it was hard getting labor back then. This was about 10 years ago. I needed people just for straight out labor, just to get on the lines where the bush cutters were to cut for the seismic lines and throw the bush off to the side. They call them stick pickers down in the States. Simple job, decent pay for what it is down there. I mean, when you're in an area where you can buy a house for $75,000, paying somebody, $150 a day to walk on the line and throw sticks off it is pretty good money. But it was hard to get decent workers. These guys I get from upstate New York, I'll spare you all the stories on that, but they drive me crazy. Either way, in the area I was in, we were renting because the boom was going on down there. I was actually renting a boarding house in a residential area to use for our field office and for me to stay in. And I had this young man who kept coming by. His name was Sharif, and kept saying, you got a job for me. I thought, great, I'm going to get into the labor pool. Something different. There's a large black population there in Williamsport and a lot of unemployment. Let's get these guys out working. It's great for me. They're employed. Everybody wins. This is perfect. Well, first, my own crew, unfortunately, not a lot of them reacted. A lot of them were fine, but a good number of them reacted negatively. And I laid down the law. Hey, guys, don't you dare make a problem with this, because Sharif says he's got a lot more friends, and I will certainly replace all of you. These are local people I'm hiring. I'm looking forward to it. So we got Sharif out in the field. Now, unfortunately, we discovered after a while, Sharif as a laborer sucked. He didn't like it. After about 10 days or so, he quit on me mid-shift, phones me up, says, I've had it with this. I don't like it anymore. Come pick me up. And of course, I was not happy. This is mid-shift. Dude, I don't have time for this. Keep finishing out the day at least, and come in with the crew, and we'll work on things after that. He says, no, I'm done. Well, fine, but I'm not picking you up until 5 o'clock when the crews are done. So that was it. Okay, about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I get a phone call from the local sheriff. So what? Well, we've picked up a gentleman on the side of the road who says he works for you guys, and I just need to confirm that. I said, yeah, this Sharif, he works for us, or he did, and what's he done wrong? So, well, nothing, but he was sitting on the side of the road, and a person phoned in and was concerned. So, well, he quit, and we weren't picking him up till 5 o'clock. That's all. He says, well, can you come get him? I said, well, we're going to get him till 5. So, well, I can't leave him out here. Fine. So I drove out and got him and brought him in, and, we dealt with his paperwork and so on. Now, what the issue was Sharif quit. He walked out of the trees, and he sat on the side of a rural road. A local resident got upset because they saw a black man sitting on the side of the road, and they called the police. And the police indulged him and picked him up. Would they have done that if it was a white guy on the side of the road? No, they wouldn't. There's no way they would have done that. Nobody even would have phoned it in. Would an officer have said, after confirming with the employer at least, oh, okay, that's what it's about. I can call this citizen and tell them to calm down, and then just let this fellow out until we come and pick him up? No, they wouldn't have done that with a white guy, but they did with the black guy. I said, no, we're not even letting him out. He hasn't committed a crime except the crime of being in a rural white area and freaking people out. This is something I've never had to experience. So it lets me know and understand at least a little bit of some of the frustration, the fear, the mistrust that goes on between some minorities and police services and with the citizens in general. That was a really ugly little incident. And hey, I worked in Pennsylvania a lot. There's a lot of fantastic people out there of all races and all over, but there's definitely a lot more division going on down in the States, particularly when I worked in the South as well, of course, you know, in West Virginia and Louisiana and down there was huge issues. But these are things that I got to admit, and I don't like when people keep throwing it at you with white privilege, but there are some things of privilege. I never had to experience those things. So there really are some roots to why some people mistrust the police. There really are some bad actions on the part of police, you know, not looking through situations and making assumptions and doing some things and servicing prejudices. More so in the States than here, but still here as well, clearly to some degree. So we can't dismiss, we shouldn't dismiss the concerns people are making with policing. It's real. What we do, though, have to stop is the crazed activists saying we have to defund the police, that we should take away their pride with the thin blue line and constantly belittle them, or as that Calgary official said, accuse them of white supremacy. That's ridiculous, and that only makes the divisions worse. And further, there's room for nuanced discussion here. There's room to accept and admit that our police services have room for improvement and that we can fix these things, and there are some real problems to address. But to try and tear it down and defund it and attack our police forces is not going to fix this problem at all. It's going to make it worse. And unfortunately, our civic leaders are indulging that crap. And that's a real problem, and that's why I get worked up with it. But I do like to present both sides. There's stuff I haven't experienced, stuff I don't necessarily understand. I do think there's room to have some discussions and see how we can do it better. But I can't see in any sort of way how defunding these guys is going to make them better in any sort of way. So let's think a little harder. That's something I like to say, City Council, all the time. Think harder, guys. I think I tweeted that earlier today because they're working now on banning vaping in public parks. This is one of their discussions, banning vaping in public parks. I've been tweeting pictures I show of the discarded syringes I see on my way into work every day. We've got a downtown that is unsafe. We've got out of control addicts. We got people dying of overdoses. And they're concerned about somebody vaping in the middle of an open park. Guys, there's people shooting up in the alleys. Get your priorities straight. And as I said to them, think harder. Like, just get it together, you nutcases. You know, you're over in Vancouver right now, Mayor Gondek, because they're discussing ways that a net zero program will somehow bring more businesses to the city. Well, as Nico showed with that tweet that I put out with all those syringes in that stairway I walked through, no business is going to relocate and bring their staff into that environment. I don't think they care if some guy's vaping on a park bench, but if they walk to scout a potential office or business front or something to open and they see a bunch of syringes laying around and they see the ambulances rounding up overdoses, as I saw yesterday on my way in, and I tweeted those out as well, they're not going to come here. But our city priorities just seem to be out to lunch, and I don't get it with these guys. But that's where they're at. So that's why I keep reminding them, think harder, guys. It's not doing well. I see our next guest in the lobby. I think I'm getting really ranted up here and worked up. Maybe I should bring Michelle in to calm things down a little bit here. So I got Michelle Stirling from Friends of Science. She's been on a number of times. She's also most definitely a friend of the Western Standard shows. And we have some ludicrous emissions targets have been set. And I'm certain Michelle will have a few things to say about it. So let's bring her in and examine our latest policies. Hey, Michelle, good to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks, Cory. Yeah. My turn to rant. Is that what you're saying?
I'm handing off the ranting torch. You're typically more polite and nuanced about it than I am, I think. But there's certainly some material to rant about, and you were the first person I thought of when I saw that coming up, you know, because you guys really like to, with Friends of Science, you know, break down the realities of policies, emissions control, climate change, and those sorts of things. And that announcement from Trudeau and Guilbeault on trying to bring our levels 40 to 45% below 2005 levels by the end of the decade are just ludicrous, and I got to get somebody to respond to this.
Yeah, no, that's totally ludicrous, and especially when you think the thing that's not being mentioned is that the federal government wants to bring in 400,000 immigrants. So you can't reduce your greenhouse gas emissions if you're bringing in that many people, because every person has a carbon footprint, and most of the people who immigrate to Canada come from warmer countries. They come from China, India, and the Philippines. Those are the principal sources of immigrants to Canada. So this isn't a comment about immigrants per se. It's about greenhouse gas emissions and how to reach these targets. So these are conflicting and contrary goals. It's impossible to meet these targets. Not to mention, none of this kind of reduction can be done overnight. You need magical new technology. You need a lot of unicorns, and we don't have either of those. And things that are being proposed as the sort of magical solution, like hydrogen, well, it doesn't exist at scale. And if you look at the work of Samuel Farfari, who's a chemical engineer, he was a director general, a senior official with the EU on energy policy for 36 years. He's written a book about it. He worked on hydrogen for years. It's not the magic bullet, because hydrogen has to be produced. And so it's actually an energy loss every step of the way. And it's quite dangerous for public consumption because it's a very tricky gas to handle. So, they're proposing solutions that don't really exist. And they're offering, it sounds like lots of money, but 9 billion here and 15 billion there and 1.5 billion here. This is nothing to accomplish the things that they want to achieve. It would be hundreds of billions of dollars.
Well, yeah, and that cost that they throw out, and I mean, I see Claudette pointing, saying that, yeah, they just throw those out to appease the greenies. They have never met a goal yet, but they can certainly harm us a lot trying to get to those goals. I mean, we know they're not going to reach that level. It's impossible. But they can really, even if it's aspirational, harm us a lot. 9 billion, 15 billion, and what they don't measure is the amount of economic activity they would quell and crush, and cost of living increases it would put to people in general when they bring in these kinds of policies.
Right. And I think the EV policy is an ideal example. And Kent Zare, who's a professional engineer, did an analysis a couple of years ago, I think 2019. And he found that we would have to build 8 Site C dam equivalents, 8 to 10 Site C dam equivalents, to meet the electricity requirements just for the EV policy, not for decarbonizing all of Canada. And that we'd need 10,000 more megawatts just for the EV policy. So if you think about that, I mean, Site C dam began development back in 1988. So, it's still not done. It's fraught with problems. It's way over budget, billions over budget. So to think that we could build 8 or 10 of those equivalent resources within the next 8-10 years is absurd. Not to mention, where would we get that money from? If you look at the policies that have been implemented so far, about the time that Kinder Morgan dropped construction on TMX, that was about the time that Houston Energy Bankers out of PPHB, Houston Energy Bankers, they posted in their newsletter musings that Canada's policies were hostile to investment. And they said that all of these projects like oil and gas, forestry, mining, all these things that require 20, 30-year horizons for development, nobody would touch Canada because that's just too scary to have policies that are hostile to investment, that are based on whim and not on a clear kind of framework as the NEB used to provide. So, you can tell that with this money the feds are throwing around, you'll only attract green crony capitalists. And my biggest fear on the electrical generation side is that we'll get so far into the EV policy and this transition and find out that we're stuck. We don't have enough money to build more resources, and that we can't go back, and that we've messed up the grid enough that ultimately people will be using this at home instead of, we'll be going back to the days of candlelight. And I'm not kidding. Power prices would go astronomically high. So, it's not a plan. What they've just provided is a bunch of ideology and modeling. There's no actual plan in any of it as to how these things will happen.
Well, and that's not as unrealistic. It's not even just a prop you used. That came up during the energy crisis as it was hitting in Europe. I believe it was the German chancellor or somebody was implying that that's what they're going to have to do to deal with the crisis this winter is get out there and light candles to cook their food.
Yes. Yes, and you can get these kind of, clay pots, and you can make your own little room heater. It does work. There's a whole bunch of videos on YouTube. It does work like to heat a room. You have to be very careful so you don't light your place on fire. But, that's what people are being reduced to. And of course, as Ezra Levant told us back in 2017, he said, yeah, that's what they want. The NDP and the Greens, they want people to be in energy poverty. They don't want them to have access to power, whether it be fuel or whether it be electricity.
Yeah, the energy is, it's everything to us. Affordable, accessible energy is so critical to modern survival. And it's one of those, it frustrates me when it gets demonized. I actually had Michael Binion on yesterday from the Modern Miracle Network. I want to explain that a little so people get confused with the name of it, saying it sounds almost like it's evangelical or something. Well, no. What his intent was in naming that was pointing out that hydrocarbons and petrochemicals were a miracle. They're a modern miracle. Mm-hmm. All of these things we are enjoying today, these long lifespans, these comfortable living, this being warm in winter, this plentiful food, all of it is due to hydrocarbons. And it's so ridiculous as a society that we're trying to spurn this miracle.
Mm-hmm. And not to mention, when you look in the global context, nobody else is doing the kind of cuts we're trying to do. And if you look at Europe is dying for more energy, right? If Putin decides to turn off the taps tomorrow, I think they have about 4 days, and then they're really in trouble. Then everybody will be hauling out their candles. But, industry relies on natural gas as well and oil, right? So then you don't have any jobs. So it's this huge domino effect. And for what? We're not even the world's largest emitters. And not only that, the most recent research shows that carbon dioxide is not the driver of climate change. So why are we doing any of this? There are environmental things that we can take care of, that we have been taking care of, like air pollution. But, reducing carbon dioxide is not a gainful, purposeful thing to do. It's destructive in every way to society.
Yeah, well, and that's some of the stuff that Mr. Binion brought up, and he was reading into some of those policies. He tried to find some glimmers of optimism to be seen within it, because it looked like there was a couple of spots, at least in that document, where they did note that they're recognizing that we're going to have to continue to produce hydrocarbons for at least some years to come. Though who knows how expensive that would become with their plans. I'm kind of wondering, this is kind of out of left field, but I spoke to a guest as well, talking about the Bay du Nord project off of Newfoundland for oil, which sounds very promising and exciting, but it's been delayed, as is the Canadian way. And we're now 15 days away from the next deadline. Do you think the government's faced enough reality, though, to at least approve this?
No, probably not. It sounds absurd, but I really don't think that they want to approve any oil and gas projects anymore. And that's certainly what the ENGOs are pushing for. And, people don't realize how powerful the environmental groups are in Canada, how much money they have, how much influence they have, how well networked they are, how many billions of dollars came from foreign funds with foreign directions, perhaps even from Russia. It's possible that we, like Europe, have suffered from Russian disinformation via the ENGO community, because when you look at the Russian Kyoto view from back in 2004, they were never into the climate change hysteria. They put together a very scientific presentation. We actually have it on our blog. So you can go and look and see what they think. They think that the climate change movement is a threat to human civilization, which is effectively what you just said. And they've thought that since 2004. But, they were maybe very happy to sit back and watch the West shoot itself in the foot while all these ENGOs advocated for impossible solutions. So, of course, all of our competitor nations in the world celebrate every time an ENGO victory happens in Canada, every time they shut down a pipeline, every time they shut down a project. All of our competitors are going, yes, we'll take that to the bank. So, that's how stupid we are in this country and how energy illiterate. Even Jagmeet Singh has been going on and on about fossil fuel subsidies to big oil and why they're making more money. If the oil companies are making more money because global prices are up, it's because there's not more Canadian product on the market, because the NDP and QB and all these ENGOs have blocked access to market. If there was more of our supply in the market, prices could be lower. But since there's a shortage of supply, too bad. Well, so who made those oil companies richer, Jagmeet? It was you and your ENGO cronies.
We'll be waiting a long time before we expect economic reality to come from the NDP, though. Cheryl, one of our commenters, did point out that Rachel Notley was actually critical of those goals. It's funny, but that's because I think Rachel Notley recognizes political reality, even if she's not really all that up on economics. I still always follow that Hayek's quote saying, if socialists really understood economics, they wouldn't be socialists. So
right.
She doesn't get it, but she does know that if she latches onto that, there's no way she's going to become the premier again. But she's all in on shutting down the oil field as much as any of those NDP leaders are.
Yeah, of course. She was at the Zombie Duck rally that was sponsored by the Sierra Club, which has been funded by foreign billionaires to shut down the oil sands. So, yeah, it's, that was back in 2010, 2015. Anyway, it's on YouTube.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's nothing like a good economic kick in the butt, though, to drive some reality in. I mean, Germany was, as people were celebrating them for a long time. These guys are almost net zero. They've shut down this, they've shut down that. But of course, what people weren't realizing is they're just piping in more and more from foreign sources to make up for what they've been shutting down. I mean, sure, they're building windmills and putting up solar panels, but as with every country, that's just a tiny supplement at best. They've got that reality now, though. I mean, it sounds like they're realizing the error of their ways.
Well, the paradox of renewables is that they always go with fossil fuels unless you have big hydro, but most countries don't. So, you have to have fossil fuel backup to put wind and solar on the grid. So I think Germany at one point had added like 90 gigawatts of wind and solar, and it made no difference in winter when the sun didn't shine and the wind didn't blow. So, that's trillions of euros floating around doing nothing when you could have just built a few gas plants. Now, it's true, and sadly, what's happened in Europe is a geopolitical battle in many ways, between the US and Russia over the European market, because the EU has almost no fossil fuels because they choose not to exploit their own shale gas. So they import about $600 billion US worth of oil, gas, and coal every year. And most of the oil and gas is coming by land pipelines from Russia. Now, if you want to make peace, just make that deal and don't fiddle with it. And, maybe this sounds like I'm a Putin apologist. I'm not. I think it's terrible that he invaded Ukraine, although I think he warned people for about 8 years about it. But the way to make peace and supply Europe with energy is to make a peace deal and make energy part of that deal, because it's a common sense solution. But if the US is going to try and drive Russia into extinction, which it seems like they're trying to do, and sacrifice the Ukraine and let Europe be the ones at risk, Europe are the ones who will be absorbing immigrants from war. They'll be absorbing a potentially battle. There may be some very angry Ukrainians who bring that battle into Europe if they have to escape the Ukraine and they can't complete their battles there. So, Europe is being sacrificed, and the US is saying, oh, this is great. Now we're going to send you some LNG from us. Now we've opened a new market for us for natural gas. So it's a very complex geopolitical situation. We should try and calm it down, in my opinion, and make peace, make a deal. And, chaos is next. and it won't be pretty, and it won't be easy to fix.
No, we've got a terrible situation unfolding over there with bad ends to it, and I mean, a lot of it, as you said, it's complicated with a lot of factors all over the place. One of which, though, if we could avoid some of these dependencies and if countries being stronger, energy independence, as you said, in Europe, they were shutting in their own resources. Well, now that left them with less ability to negotiate on things when the crap hit the fan, as it did. I mean, we've got the same in Quebec. They've got some great natural gas resources down there, and they said they're going to refuse to develop them. And it's absurd. I'm just kind of hoping that, again, I know maybe I just maintain a crazed optimism, but we're seeing all of this happening right now. What better time to face reality and say the Bay du Nord is going to go because we need that domestic production on our east side of the country. And Quebec, it's time to get in there and start developing that, or we're going to cut your equalization. You're not getting any more energy money from other provinces when you refuse to develop your own. I don't expect that logic out of Trudeau, but maybe citizens will start speaking up. I mean, if all these Newfoundlanders get put out of work by shutting down the Bay du Nord, there's going to be some repercussions.
Well, you know, this can't go on for very much longer, and we can't keep making these promises. We did a video, and we also have a post about the monumental financial problems that are facing Canadians. Robert Lyman summarized some tables from a federal government report. You know, we are so far in debt and have such a huge, massive deficit. This can't go on.
No, and as you've referenced a number of times, and we're coming up on a close here. It always goes fast when I'm talking with you. There's so much to cover. The Friends of Science site and your blogs have a massive amount of resources. Can you list where people can find that and get more background and all of that? Because of course, you don't just talk. I mean, you guys research. You are Friends of Science. You have a lot of background to back your points, which is important.
Well, if you go to friendsofscience.org, you can find all of our material there. We have a new website, and we'd be very happy to have you take out a membership or be a donor, help support our work. We're a very small nonprofit operating on about $150,000 a year from our member subscribers. And we have a blog post, which all of our blogs are a collection of information from around the world. We have a number of pieces from Samuel Fafari, who I mentioned earlier. So that gives you a very good European view on the energy crisis and the challenges with the Russian-Ukraine conflict. And we've got lots of good reports. We put one out recently called Deception versus Reality, which Robert Lyman looked at the claims of subsidies to fossil fuels and found that there are none. And all these ENGOs are just spinning a Pinocchio tale. So hope you'll have a look at that. We're also on YouTube, of course, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and we'd love you to join in the conversation and share our stuff.
Great. Well, thank you. And thank you for coming on. And yes, folks, get on there and have a look. There's a lot of resources, and it's kind of up to all of us on social media to be advocates for our resources and things like that. And Friends of Science can point you the right way so that, hey, when people call you out and say, can you source that? Well, that's where you can point. Show that link, because Michelle and the others with that organization make sure that everything's very solid. So thanks again for coming on to talk to me today, and I'm certain we'll have the chance to do so again in the future.
Okay, stock up on candles and toilet paper, everyone.
Yeah, of course, the toilet paper. All right. Thanks, Michelle.
Okay.
So yeah, again, just to repeat, that's Michelle Stirling of the Friends of Science. And they speak a lot of great common sense. They give a lot of resources. One that Michelle mentioned at the end, and that comes into what Jagmeet Singh mentioned too, and it drives me bananas when we always hear that, is that myth about our subsidies going towards our fossil fuel production and our petrochemical sector. It's BS. It's baloney. I ranted about that the other day. And the more you can be able to counter that myth as it comes out from people, because they use it incorrectly, opponents to, well, I call them Luddites, they're opponents to modern energy, use that excuse to shut things down. Oh, if we just stopped subsidizing, it wouldn't be economic. BS, and it's not subsidized. So get out there on the Friends of Science, and you can see some of the bottom line on where those facts really are when it comes to that myth of subsidization. Now, subsidizing with us, well, that's based on subscribers and sponsors. So I'm going to get back to one of our sponsors one more time, and that is Bitcoin Well. These guys are a fantastic sponsor for us. Again, we're in crazy times. I mean, as we're seeing from our news guests and what's going on outside of there with our currencies, the Canadian dollar seems to be doing a little bit well this week, but who knows? Plus, we just don't know if and when the government may come in and try and take your money away from you. digital currencies are a way you can get your money out of reach of the government. And that was well confirmed with Bitcoin. They can't get to your cold wallet. Look that stuff up. Look how it works. It's actually a physical device you will have in your house, in your possession, that holds your Bitcoin. The government can't get it. They don't know what you've got in it. It's none of their business. You can secure yourself this way. These guys help get you into it. They can help you with savings plans, as you can see here, where you can put a little bit in at a time, build something up. They make it practical. They got ATMs all over the West, and they're a Western Canadian company. I think they got them across the country now, all over the place. They're really spreading with these things. Make it as practical as possible, like any other currency. You can do set it and forget it plans where just a few bucks every couple of weeks or months go into your Bitcoin account, or like we're doing at the Western Standard. I like to remind everybody, they got corporate accounts. It makes it so easy where it's voluntary, of course, for employees, but a portion of our checks will go into a Bitcoin wallet. And then the Western Standard, in our case, matches that. And a little bit gets set aside for us every month, a little bit of savings in something that's in a different currency, sort of hedges your bets and gets it out of the government reach. So check them out, a good Canadian company, bitcoinwell.com, and take control of your money. All right, let's run through a little more news here while we're going through some things. So yeah, getting on to the emissions and all that good stuff. We got the feds, they're mulling an SUV tax proposal. We've heard about these kinds of things before. They want to punish you for having a large family and wanting to take them to soccer games, or for needing that larger vehicle to get through the snowy, icy weather, to get groceries and things like that. If you must drive in their ideological world, you should be driving, I guess, an electric car, as Joe Biden said. Just buy an electric car, right? Come on. Well, they want to add a tax on your SUVs, make it more expensive for the vehicles they don't approve of, don't feel that are, being a good citizen, getting back closer almost to that social credit system. How dare you want to drive something bigger than a little Prius or an electric car? We're going to punish you, and we're going to put a tax on that. This shows the sickness of government. They've got to force you into everything. If the green vehicles are that good, you don't need to be punished in having the other vehicles to be drawn to it. You will go there on your own. There's reasons people don't want electric vehicles. There's a lot of reasons. They're grossly expensive. Electricity isn't free, despite what some people want to put out there. You have to upgrade your house. The batteries degrade and cost a fortune. They're hard to service. Their range sucks. They don't work with the crap in cold weather. Aside from that, they're fantastic. Look, maybe they're going to get there. Maybe the day's going to come where you can get a $10,000 electric vehicle that's large enough to accommodate your family, that you can actually drive on a highway to visit family in another province without stopping every few hours in cold weather to wait an hour to charge it. It won't shoot your electric bill into the roof. But of course, there might also be unicorns that'll fly you there too at some point. Who knows? It may come, but it's not here yet. So they're busy driving us away from what we've already got when they haven't developed the alternative we're supposed to go towards. It's just another tax grab. It's just going to make life more expensive for us, and it's going to hurt us. And of course, they want to give a rebate to electric car buyers. Look, if the electric cars are bloody good, we'll buy them. Go out in the streets. They've been pushing that horse crap on us for a decade now. Oh, we're going to be replacing them any day now. We're going to be replacing. 10 years ago, they were saying we'd be like 30% electric by now. Go out there. They don't even make up a couple percent of the vehicles on the road in Canada. They're growing, but they got a long way to go. It's not even close. So quit punishing people for using vehicles that they have to right now because the alternative isn't there yet. But they're going to throw a tax on your SUV, guys. So, on top of the other taxes, we're in this energy crisis. We're all broke. We're having hard times. And what do we got coming April 1st? Tax increases. The carbon tax is rising based on a liberal lie. Let's not forget the old climate Barbie, Catherine McKenna, saying we're never going to raise it again. She lied. They raised it again. And they're going to keep raising it. And they also lied. Guilbeault lied, said it's revenue neutral, said the rebates, some people will actually make more money on this. Listen to the stuff these guys will sell to you. You'll make more money out of the carbon tax because of this great rebate program. When it was actually put to scrutiny in committee, they said, no, that's not true at all. You'll lose money. A very select few people will actually get more back in rebates than they put in, but the majority of us will lose money on it. You don't tax something. There's no such thing as a revenue neutral tax. If that's the case, don't take it. That's the easiest way to do it. Leave the money in my pocket. Don't pull it out and then say, okay, you apply and I'll give you some of it or all of it back. Just leave it alone in the first place. We'll be fine. I'll deal with it. I'll buy what I need to. This carbon tax is hurting us. As I was saying to Michelle, energy is everything. Energy impacts your cost on everything. I look at some of these imbeciles. I had a debate with I won't call him out. He was a former Olympian, though, in Vancouver. It was an interesting one, and he very good Olympian, not a real bright soul when it comes to energy. And he was talking about, this doesn't impact me. I don't have a car, really. If the whole world went electric, what do you think is going to happen to the bill to turn on the lights in your house? When you increase demand for that power by, I don't know what it would take, 10-fold, 20-fold, what do you think is going to happen to your bill? It's not free, you clowns. You make things more expensive for everybody. What do you think happens when you put the price of gas up with all the trucks that have to move your product? The trains, they aren't solar powered. The ships that bring your Amazon goodies, the cute things you want to show down at the hipster bar when you go downtown there to have your organic, locally brewed beer that, by the way, the initial malt was probably fired with natural gas. Sorry, guys. But this is this bizarro world. It's like I want, but they don't want to deal with the reality that you don't have it yet. We don't have an alternative. And we're getting the policy following, but we got to look. I mean, Prime Minister Clown Shoes. This isn't a guy with a lot of reality in his world. He's been raised in a cloistered place. He's never had to deal with making bills. He gets an SUV drive him around. He gets a private jet to drive him around. Why would he know why a family might need something larger, a minivan or an SUV, in order to function and operate? He doesn't understand how that works. Why don't they just get the chauffeur to drive them? And I mean, that's pretty much the world he's in. Ontario and Quebec love him, so we're stuck with him for a while yet at the rate we're going. All right, let's get on to provincial stuff here. Bill 52. Okay, this is something some people are getting excited about. It's the recall legislation. Well, I would be excited about it. I'm glad they finally proclaimed it. It only took them 3 years. The problem with it, and it's a big problem, so I mean, this will enable people to revoke a representative seat. So this includes MLAs, municipal officials, and school board officials. Cool. I like that. Problem is, they've set the bar ridiculously high, and they did it on purpose. So to petition, and I don't know the timeline offhand, you only get a certain amount of months. You have to get 40% of the eligible electors to sign an official petition in order to invoke a recall. Now, think about the logistics of that. We've got some constituencies where 40% of the electors didn't even come out. You've got to get them, and we're not talking about, you can't do an online petition. You can't do any of that sort of stuff. You have to get a physical signature on a piece of paper with their address, with their phone number, and their full name. Every one of them. 40% of the eligible ones. And when you go through these kinds of petitions, they'll strike off any that they can't prove their address with. They can't prove that this person signed it. If they phone to confirm it, they can't. So you got to get more like 45% if you really want to make it happen. And in a short period of time. Anybody who's really petitioned before understands that this is impossible. Anybody who's run for office before, like I ran for the Libertarian Party federally, to make some points. It was fun going to those forums and that. But I had to get 100 signatures from people just to get my nomination papers to be a federal candidate. I got about 120. And once they scrutinized everything, I was down to 101 when I brought that into the returning officer to get in. And it took me days to get those. Because not everybody feels comfortable giving a signature to somebody who shows up at their door, and giving their address and giving their phone number. It's understandable. And even if they supported my ability to run, they just didn't want to have that on paper. Well, not everybody's going to want to support the recall. Yet you've got to get 40% of the eligible voters to do that. Most places with a functional recall, what they base it on is 40% or 30% or whatever it might be of those who actually came out to vote in the last election. That shows the active number of voters there, not the large number who didn't bother to come out in the first place. So this recall legislation, don't hold your breath. We'll get to see it happening pretty quickly because I think the people very upset with Sean Chu are looking to get that going, and they want to recall Chu, so they're very motivated and they're working hard. Let's see. Let's see if they get 40% and manage to recall Sean Chu. I'll lay my bet on it right now. They're not going to invoke the recall because they won't get nearly enough of the signatures. Not that everybody is necessarily thrilled in Ward 4 with Sean Chu. It's just logistically, it is an impossible bar that he has set. He's given you fake legislation. It's garbage. It's not worth the paper it's now finally been at least brought in on, but it's no good. So either way, I wish I could celebrate it, but I can't. And plus the fact that he took 3 and some years to bring it in. I guess he just didn't even want the embarrassment of people going out and petitioning to try and recall, because, people will try and recall Kenny, they'll try and recall cabinet ministers. You do have to set the bar reasonably. I understand that. You can't make it too easy. You don't want people starting the day after election to work on recalling whoever they didn't like who won, and you can't constantly hold these. But if you set 40%, for example, of those who came out to vote, that's a pretty high bar. You've got to be pretty serious about it, and people have to be pretty seriously ticked off to sign on enough to turn that over. It's nice to have that means in those extreme situations when somebody's really crossed a line. But this legislation is no good. The fear-mongering is continuing. I was watching the CTV in hushed tones. Of course, they're getting their biologists and everything, and saying, the wastewater numbers, the COVID cases are going up. We've got the sixth wave coming, people. We've got it coming. This is from CTV with Ontario too. They're saying it's already there. There's no doubt it's a sixth wave. He's saying it's being driven by this new subvariant, and it's our fault. This is a biologist, an expert. The CTV found, of course, because you can always find one. He says we've opened the doors to this, and we've eliminated all our defenses. What he's saying is we got to lock down again. Got to lock down again. No, it's done. Kiss my ass. We're done with lockdowns. Quit going to these idiot experts. Quit going to Notley's pet NDP, Dr. Joe Vipond. Quit going to these guys. It's not happening. Look at what the protests were last time, guys. You think there's something? You try and bring restrictions back now. We got to learn to live with this. As I was talking about yesterday in my rant, we've got to reform our healthcare then to deal with the waves of this. We've got to accommodate this when it comes up and down. Lockdowns are not in the cards. It's done. But nobody seems to have told the mainstream media that. I swear they love this pandemic. Whenever there's any possible negative opportunity to report on it, they do it. It drives me nuts. When things were going, we were getting the daily reports on how many people were in ICU. If the ICU numbers went down, they'd talk about the positivity rate of the testing. If the positivity rate of the testing went down, they'd talk about the deaths over the course of the last 30 days. They would pick whatever stat they could find to make it look bad. They'd never want to report on saying, hey, things are looking all right. And if they couldn't find anything else to say things are doing, badly, if they had to report that everything is looking on the up and up, they would search out and find some negative Nelly to go on and try to spread that fear. And usually it was people like Vipond and others. They're zero risk cultists, and it's not reasonable, but they're pushing. They want us locked down again, and they're working towards it. So watch for it, guys. Watch for it. The pressure's coming, and it's being headed by the legacy media. When is this ever going to end? When we make it end? What else we got? Yes, brace yourself. Interest rates are supposed to be headed up faster and higher than we ever thought. I guess some economists now think the Bank of Canada rate could go twice as high as it was pre-pandemic. Now, this is getting back to straight monetary things. As I was talking to Michelle, socialists don't understand economics, but a lot of people don't look at monetary policy and things as well. Fine. But you got to understand inflation. When the government borrows and borrows and borrows and uses the Bank of Canada to basically introduce more and more money into the system, it devalues the currency, causes inflation. It's the government's fault. It's the reality. When we keep talking about these programs, I get sick of that with people. We just got to spend more here. It comes at a price, and it's catching up. Your cost of living is going up, and it's because of this inflation. The only way the government has to cool that down is to raise interest rates. And that's what they're going to do. They've already raised them a little, and they're going to raise them more. And because of this long period of time when we had low interest rates, there's a lot of people very heavily in debt. And it's unfortunate, but if they start seeing another point rise in interest and things like that, that's what's going to drive some people out of their homes and into bankruptcy. I mean, maybe they shouldn't have got themselves that vulnerable in the first place, but again, we don't need more economic disruption. We need to cut the bloody spending and get realistic. But either way, my advice to everybody, lay off on the borrowing, guys. The rates are going up, and they're going up faster than expected. I don't think they're actually going up faster than expected, even though that's what that story says. I think it's just that they didn't want to have to admit that, and they just can't deny it anymore. All right, well, let's remind everybody again, guys, keep following us on here. And again, these social media things, I got to remind you, Dave's got that big scoop coming. If you haven't turned on the alerts on your YouTube and things like that, like we do a lot of specials when things break, when they come out, it'll pop up. And if you're subscribed to YouTube, Rumble, all of those sites that we broadcast to, you will get it show, hey, the Standards got something. They got something new. I mean, I'm on every day. I'm consistent that way, but we got a lot of other stuff. Melanie does some fantastic interviews when she gets guests and she comes on, and we put those out in the evenings and things like that. The pipeline once a week. Make sure you've subscribed. Make sure to share it, tweet it out, do those things. Help us spread the word, and then we can do better and cover more of this stuff. I got a good show coming tomorrow. I got Dr. Dennis Modry of the Alberta Prosperity Project. I know you guys keep talking about that in the comments scroll. Well, Dr. Modry's coming in tomorrow, or he's going to be on video tomorrow. Anyways, we're going to interview him live and talk about what they're up to and what that's about and what they're doing. And I'll have the Conservative Party of Canada leadership candidate Roman Baber on to speak with me as well. Some might remember him. He was a member of provincial parliament, like an MLA for us in Alberta. In Ontario, he got kicked out of his party well early in the pandemic because he opposed Ford on his restrictions and vaccine mandates and things like that. He got kicked out of there for that. Now he's running for the federal leadership of the Conservative Party of Canada. So that'll be an interesting interview as well. I think that'll be the 5th or 6th one of these candidates I've had out of the 10 or 11 they've got. It's going to be a good one. We'll round out the week well. So thank you all for tuning in with us today, guys, and I will see you all tomorrow at 11:30 a.m. sharp.